I'm Anthony Geathers.
And I'm Gregg Weiss.
And we are the hosts of CASE-4-BASS.
Hey everyone, this is Michael Visceglia, and you are watching CASE-4-BASS.
If you want me, you can find me left of center of the street. Have you anything to say to me? Won't you tell me where my love can be?
This is Mike Visceglia, a New York City homegrown bass icon. And he is the event, how do I say, his creator, and organizes a brunch for bassists in the New York City area, because the big thing is we never meet. If we're always gigging, we never hook up. We talk on the phone and we go, "Hey man, how you doing? We should hook up." And Mike nails it by having the word out, and people show. I didn't make the first one that recently happened lately, but Anthony did, and Anthony can tell us about that. But Mike, thank you for being on the show.
You're
Mike,
welcome.
thank you very much.
Happy to be here. And you know, the New York Bass Brunch that you're referring to has been going on for over 12 years now.
Oh, so great!
Over the course of that time, a lot of really great people have joined the party, as it were, and sat down for a nice little social time with fellow bassists. And we've had some big superstars and some just regular old folk bass players, you know, and it's a level playing field, so everybody's invited to the table.
Awesome. Now let's take it back to when you first started, because obviously you mentioned before that you were on guitar first, and then you found your love for bass. So give us your intro to when you got involved in music, in the bass in particular.
Yeah, well, you know, I was born in the East Village of Manhattan. My father was a semi-professional musician playing saxophone and clarinet and flute. And he exposed me very early to great music. So I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and he was playing me jazz and all the great jazz singers and players of the day. Well, that at that point in time, it was the 50s, but I took that love, you know, for the rest of my life. And when I was about 11 years old, I started. I wanted to start learning music, to play an instrument. I wanted to. For real, I wanted to study a little bit, so I took some guitar lessons, and that was very good, because it not only actually, when I started, I wanted to play classical guitar, believe it or not. As a 12-year-old, I was like, that's the sound I want, the nylon string guitar. So I started taking some classical guitar lessons, and fortunately that put my right hand in a good position to transition to the bass, which I did in about a year after I started studying guitar.
Okay, so what was your first bass that you that you actually grabbed in your hand and felt like, okay, this is my instrument of choice for the rest of my life?
Well, that happened later. My first bass was a brand that certainly doesn't exist anymore. It is a very cheap brand called a Coral. Coral, and it was sort of like a hexagonal shape, and it was a pretty funny bass. But it was like, at the time, I think it cost like $40 or something, and it's something that at least I got started on. I actually joined a band, and started playing bass in a band when I was about 12, and even doing a little bit of gigging with that band, because they were all too they were all 2 and 3 years older than me. So they were like 14, 15, and we started playing like some school dances and things like that. So that's what I had. But the first time I got I think it was a 1968 or 69 Fender jazz bass
Whoa,
with a
nice.
block, with block inlays and all that. That was
Mhm.
that was like owning, for me, it was like owning a Cadillac. I just carried
Okay.
that thing around and I showed it off and I played that, and that was like a beautiful moment for me. And it also set me up for the rest of my life to be a jazz bass lover. So pretty much every bass that I've owned since then has either been a jazz bass or a bass or an instrument based on a jazz bass with 2 single coil pickups.
I'm going to coin a phrase, Anthony. Anthony and I talk about basses every day,
All
and
the time.
one of the things
Why
he
not?
mentions is Fender DNA. How
Yeah.
there's something in that style of
Oh
instrument
yeah.
that, even though it transcends a bunch of brands, when you don't hear it, you know it, and when you
Yeah.
don't feel it when you play it, you know it.
Yeah.
And I'm a Fender DNA guy. I'm a Music Man. I'm a G&L. I'm a Fender Jazz.
Mhm.
And I got a Fender style custom fretless with, multiple high-end parts, Bartolini's and
Mhm.
Kubicki body, ESP fretless, ebony neck. And,
Yeah.
it's one of the things that we think we bond to as players.
Yeah, I think because I started out I on a Fender Jazz, and I think it just was something that I was so proud of and so attracted to, and it felt so right that I kind of just went with that for the rest of my life. I did veer off sometimes. I've had some Federa basses. I've had I had a Stuart Spector, a couple of Stuart Spectors. I went off in some different directions, but after all is said and done, I came back to Fender Jazz style basses, which is what I still play.
Nice.
Okay. So talk about, speaking of your influences, as far as you said, your dad got you into the idea of playing. So you heard jazz growing up, right? So what was the
Yeah.
first piece of music that influenced your style of bass playing?
Oh my goodness, I would say the first stuff that really caught my ear was when the first Cream and Jimi Hendrix records came out. Because that's when I really started to like, okay, there's something going on in the bass there. That's not
Absolutely.
like that was a lot more evident than it was in just the pop AM hits of the time.
Did you find you had a feel for it being with a guitar background?
Oh yeah.
That you were dialing in on a part of an orchestration that just hadn't, it was taking stride.
Yep. Well, fortunately, I had talent, and that was very evident early on, and I had a very good ear, so I was pretty readily able to pick out parts. So when I heard activity like that in a the bass line, I was, oh, this is where I want to go, and that just kept me going in that direction.
Nice. What kind of music did your parents play in your home growing up?
Growing up, everything. It started out with jazz, and then it went into classical, big band, pop music, a lot of popular singers of the day, whether it was from everything from Billie Holiday to Johnny Mathis and everything in between, and so Frank Sinatra. I heard all.
This is all.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Awesome, dude.
aside from that, growing up in the East Village, you had access to these people that you were listening to on records, because a lot of them were playing. Did you find you were going to a lot of clubs that you were seeing different kinds of music?
I really didn't go to clubs until I was a teenager. But yeah, when I became a teenager, that's all I did was go to clubs and go to concerts, and in the 70s especially, that was the best time of all to be in New York and to be a musician, or to
I
be
mean,
a,
how far were you from the Fillmore? If you were in the East Village, you were right
I
there.
went to the Fillmore. I went to the Fillmore when I was 14 the first time. My friend's parents took me there, and
Oh, wow.
so I went to the Fillmore a number of times. I went to all the rock, you know, concert venues when I was in my teenage years, and you know, that was basically, you know, the
Roman Coliseum
that
of
was
rock.
yeah, that was like when I saw those kinds of concerts, which they don't have anymore.
No.
No, they don't.
When I saw those kinds of concerts with you know, 3 disparate acts on the bill every night, you know, that was, to me, that was nirvana. That was what I wanted to do. I knew very early on that I was going to pursue being a professional musician.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about your style. Who did you see live that might have been? I mean, I'm talking about bass players that you would see live at first. So obviously, you started going to clubs later. But who did you see live where you said, "I want to sound similar to similar to that style, if not better"? Like, who was your most influential bass player that you might have seen live?
Well, I actually never saw him live, but when I was a teenager and really getting into bass, it was all about Jack Bruce. You know, Jack Bruce, and then who I did see live after that were I really got into the you know, the British scene, and especially the proggers. You know, so I was really into Chris Squire. I was really into Jack Bruce.
Very nice.
Obviously John Paul Jones, who was like, you know, was a, you know, kind of a bass virtuoso in the hard rock world. And
Okay.
you know, those are the kinds of guys that, you know, when I listened to, I was like, oh boy, yeah, this is really what I want. I want to head in this direction, you know. And then when I saw
Awesome.
Jocko, that was the be all end all. That was like, okay, the high bar has been set now, and there will be thousands of bass players trying to get to that level at this point.
But there are, there were,
and there are, and there were,
you know, and you know, Anthony and I call it digging in. Is when you're reaching to ascend, when you know your arrangement, you know your part, but you know that you got to put that extra energy that's within you into your expression at the time.
Yeah. Well, you know, the actually the person that influenced me in a way maybe the most, and I say that because not only do I consider him probably the best bass guitar player that ever lived, but I got to know him pretty well and hang out with him when I was younger in the 70s, was Anthony Jackson.
Oh, come on.
Wow.
Oh, come on. All right. Now you got to give it up.
You get to freak out. You got to give it up. What's up? Come on, Mike.
Well, Anthony went to Bronx Science, New York, high school, and I was playing with a drummer in a band that also went to Bronx Science and was Anthony's best friend. And so I got to meet Anthony through my friend Casey. Casey Conrad was the drummer, and we would hang out, and he would come see me play. You know, I would see him play. He would, you know, give me tips. He would talk about inspiration for him and attitude about playing the instrument. And, you know, so there was a guy who took it to like a whole other extreme level. I mean, everything he did, you know, finger style, picking style, sound. He was the first guy to have, you know, more than he was first person to play a more than a 4-string, 5-string, 6-string bass. But you know, I know they had 6-string basses in the 60s, but he had
that was guitar based.
I know it was guitar based. He had it with he had designers design his instruments that were, you know, with wider string spacing, so the necks became enormous, and then he experimented with all kinds of body designs, and he was the first he was one of the first bass players, if not the first bass player, to start to use multi effects on a regular basis. You know, chorusing and phasing and all of that. And you know, he just expanded the whole palette and the whole you know, what can be done on an instrument, and incorporated it into every single style of music that he was playing. And he was playing everything. He was playing with the Buddy Rich band. He was playing with Chaka Khan. He was playing with everybody at the time. He was, you know, in the 70s, Anthony was, you know, he was, you know, probably the first call bass player in New York.
Wow.
Ever catch him with Michel Camilo?
Yeah.
Because
well,
I got dragged into the whole scene because I'm thinking I'm younger than you, but although I'm 58. But when I was
You're a lot
turning,
younger than me.
I think we're. Wait, how old are you? How old are you? How old are you, Mike? If you mind me asking you.
I just turned 69.
Bullshit, dude! You so do not.
No
look
way.
Like you're 69.
No way. I may have a heart transplant, but
I'm not buying 69.
It's true.
I thought you were, honestly. I thought you were closer to my age. I thought you were closer to 55.
It's hard to admit, but November 8th, I turned 69.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you,
and happy Thanksgiving.
You're 1 year from 70, bro. But you would never.
No, I needed to hear that. You needed to drive that that knife in. You needed to stick that in.
But you don't look like it. Like you don't. Honestly, I mean, that'll be my next question as well. Do you find that music maintains a sense of youth?
Oh yeah, you know, it's music, and it's the lifestyle, and the fact that I've never had I've never had a like a day job. I never had to, you know, do like a regular commute and wear a suit.
Yeah,
sit in a cubicle. You know, it's all of those things that
good for you.
That helps.
Good for you.
You didn't have that. You didn't have the day-to-day stress that most normal people would have. If they're not artists.
That's true, but it's the stress of being a freelance musician my entire life has been in a lot of ways a lot more.
Let's talk about that actually. Let's discuss that, because most people don't understand the idea of being a working player, and there is a lot of stress related to it. Look, there's a lot of reward in the sense that you're doing something that you love doing. Like you love the idea of playing. You're your own boss. You're kind of, in a sense, you have control of your hours. I mean, you really don't, but you do. But you know that you're probably working mostly at nights. But you're also dealing with the fact that if the phone doesn't ring, how are you gonna make your rent? You know, how are you gonna make your rent? How are you gonna eat? You know, so let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's a kind of lifestyle and an attitude that most people never encounter and are scared shitless of encountering, because there's no built-in security to this at all. Everything I did from when I started playing, I did on my own. I had to make sure I had enough money to pay the bills, to pay the rent, to pay insurance. I had to make sure that I had health insurance. I had to make sure that I invented work as it went along. It's a hard life. There's no employee pension plans that your employers are contributing to. You have to do all of this on your own, and it's a scary thing. And I've been fortunate, you know, that I've had the right amount of talent. I was born in New York. You know, I had the right amount of opportunities. I met the right people, but it was very, you know, you have to be extremely proactive. It's not a reactive kind of lifestyle. You always have to go out there and you have to meet people and you have to get into the scene and find different scenes and meet different people. And when you're, you know, what I say, you know, when you talk about luck, my definition of luck is where preparation meets opportunity. That's what luck is. So you have to be prepared that when the opportunity presents itself, and whatever that opportunity is, that you can you know, step up to the plate and you can deliver. And you also have to have the amount of fearlessness that it takes to be a freelance musician is something that does not come natural to me. Not at all.
Especially as a support role. It's not like you're not there to be the lead singer, the lead guitar player. You're not there to be that, out front personality. The bass is a support role for most cases. And
it's the idea. It's the idea of jumping from opportunity to opportunity. And like, for instance, I'll give you a little, for instance. One of the first steady gigs that I had, which was for 5 years, was when I was playing with Flo and Eddie and the Turtles.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Which I did from around 1980 through 1984.
Oh, wow.
And I was touring with them, and it was a steady gig, and it was a fun gig. I was playing great music, and we were playing Turtle songs and Frank Zappa songs, and it was just so much fun. And then in 1984, a friend of mine recommended me to audition for a very young female singer-songwriter who just got a deal on A&M Records, who was an unknown quantity, and her name was Suzanne Vega.
Ooh,
my name is Luca.
So in 1984, I was like, do I jump off the Flo and Eddie Turtles train, which could conceivably go on for many, many years, and it actually did go on for many.
Still
years.
Going on now.
Oh no, it's over. It's pretty much.
I mean,
over.
they do the Happy Together tour.
No, well, Howard is just as an aside. Howard Kalin, who is Eddie,
yes,
he's been retired for years.
Oh,
he hasn't done that. Mark Volman, who is Flo, has so many health problems that he's barely.
Wow.
Gotcha. I always see him sitting down.
They kind of throw him on stage, and
he's not in good shape.
They're both not in good shape. But
continue with Suzanne Vega.
But I did the very first Happy Together tour in 1984. So that was the very first.
Nice.
Okay.
But what I was saying is, I got this phone call, and it was like this young female who was on got a deal on a major label, and it was like, do I jump off this train and like jump into the deep and take a chance with somebody that nobody knows, and who knows how long that's going to last? And then I listened to the music, and my father was like advising me against it. He was like, no, you can't jump off the.
Really? What was his reasoning behind that?
A certain amount of known security, stick with what you have a job, that job can go for years. You're doing pretty well, and just hang with that. And I listened to the music, and I just had an intuitive response that I needed to jump.
Wow.
And you have to have a certain amount of fearlessness to jump into the unknown.
Well, and also you're kind of like an A&R guy at the same time.
Yeah, and so I made the jump, and that was one of the best moves I've ever made, because I joined up with her in 1985, and I played on a lot of her records, including My Name Is Luca, and stayed with her for decades. And I'm actually still intermittently playing with her. I'm playing 4 shows with her coming up at the City Winery over Christmas.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Awesome.
So
congratulations.
That was like I've gotten to go around the world many times touring, playing the biggest venues in the world, concert video at Royal Albert Hall, playing Carnegie Hall, playing, these wonderful, wonderful places. And I got to meet an incredible amount of celebrities and super interesting people. Through her, I got to spend.
So had you stayed with Flo and Eddie, and you basically agree with your dad, you would have never experienced this. No,
never. And the Flo and Eddie thing, as fun as it was, and it was great fun. It wasn't a really great art expression of what I could do on the instrument. So when I joined up with Suzanne, I had a fair amount of leeway to explore things that I wanted to explore, and actually put them put them out in the world, and not only on the concert stage but also in the studio. So I've gotten my signature sound on some of those recordings, and I've gotten to be fairly well known for what I was able to do with her. And I have a kind of a fan base from around the world just from that past experience, those past experiences.
Mike,
let's do this. Wait, hold on. Let me, while you're still on the credits, I want you to continue while you're on the credits. So you have Suzanne Vega. You've been touring around the world with her. So tell me about additional credits that you have as well.
Oh, I have a lot of credits. The first the first concert tour I did when I was 22 was I auditioned for John Cale. If you remember, John Cale is from the Velvet Underground with Lou Reed. Yep. So he was the first guy went. So I stayed with him for 2 years, and then I jumped into the let me see, what year was this? Then I jumped into the Flo Eddie thing. Okay. And then I got a call to join a band with Jorma Kaukonen, which was from Jorma, the guitar player from Hatuna. Yep. And I moved to San Francisco, and we had a band, we had a trio that lasted about a year called Vital Parts, which we toured around America with. And then after that was Suzanne, which took up a whole lot of my life. But in the middle of the Suzanne thing, I was also able to I became the musical director for a blue-eyed soul artist that got signed to Arista named Curtis Stigers. And he sold a couple million records, believe it or not. He had a couple of big hits, and we toured around the world. And I got to tour with Joe Cocker, and we did shows with everybody. We did shows with Rod Stewart, Elton John, Mike and the Mechanics. I did the entire with Curtis. I did the entire opening act tour with Eric Clapton. We did his entire stadium tour from Shea Stadium to Candlestick Park. So I did all of that.
When was that? What year?
That was around 1990, 91, 92, somewhere in there.
You get to meet Nathan East and talk to him, and
well, I got to meet him. I mean, I didn't get a lot of interaction with him.
He was busy.
Yeah, but that was
well, as we all discussed, very seldom do you have two bass players in the same gig or in the same room.
But playing stadium was an incredible experience. And then, in the meantime, between all of this, I got to record with a lot of great people. I recorded a tune with Bruce Springsteen and Pete Seeger. I recorded with Jackson Browne. I recorded with Phoebe Snow. I recorded with Bette Midler. I also toured and played with Christopher Cross.
Wow.
So it just keeps going on, and I am where I am now, and I have 3 or 4 of my own bands. I'm still very active in the scene. I'm still playing lots and lots of gigs and doing lots of studio. I've released a couple of my own records.
That was my next question, actually. I wanted to hear that. Do you have your own solo material?
I have my own records. I've written 3 books, and I just keep active and creative as much as I can.
Okay, speaking of that, tell us, where can people find your records? What are the titles?
Hopefully you can find them on the the first record I did, the first 2 records, I'm not 100% sure where you can find them, because I didn't release them as streamers yet. But you can probably look around and find it. The first one I did was just a bass, a 4-string bass guitar and vocal record with a partner of mine, a female singer, and that's all there is on the record.
Wow! So it's just bass and vocals. That's it.
That's it. It's called "Then There Were Two."
Then there were 2.
My partner is a beautiful Australian singer named Fiona McBain. Okay. And this album is an album of very eclectic cover songs, cover material that I orchestrated for the bass guitar. So I'm covering there's not a lot of single note playing on this record. I'm playing all the harmony, and I made it like sort of like a combination of a bass guitar accompaniment and kind of a classical guitar accompaniment.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
so, and we do everything from, we do a Beatles song, I do Hoagie Carmichael song, I do Burt Bacharach on it. It's like, it's a pretty cool record, and it's just bass and voice. So it's a nice showcase for me and the way I think about certain things. Yeah.
Okay. Greg, you had something you wanted to say before I wanted to continue on the credits.
It was a question that was kind of answered, but it's a question we always ask bass players who've been on recordings, which is Anthony and I always talk about how some of these great bass players that we know of, that they're stifled by the production process.
Stifled in which way? Internally stifled or from externally stifled?
Externally, and usually it's because I'll give you an example. What's the bass player's name? He used to play with not Suicidal Tendencies. Thundercat. Thundercat went into this. Thundercat has a 6-string Ibanez, which is a gorgeous bass.
Yeah.
And then he was doing some work with Raphael Sadiq.
Yeah.
And he walks into the studio with that bass. And Raphael Sadiq is like, absolutely not. And then hands him the jazz bass.
I would agree with Raphael. Well, I'm not too. Yeah. No, actually not. Here's the way this goes with me. Here's the way I feel about it. When you have someone like Thundercat, who's got a very signature sound and what he does, and he's got a very strong vision of what he does. When you hire Thundercat,
you get Thundercat
do his thing.
Yep.
You let Thundercat do his thing. If he wanted a more, I know what Raphael Sadiq's music is kind of like, and if he wants more of that kind of, new soul vibe thing, that groovy, maybe he should have got a Pino Palladino or somebody to play on it, and somebody who's
like he did with like a D'Angelo project,
like a D'Angelo kid, or get a guy that's more in line with that kind of playing than a Thundercat. It's a double-edged sword. You want Thundercat on your record, you let him do Thundercat. You don't tell him not to do what he does. It's like anything else. You want Steve Gadd on your record, you let Steve Gadd do Steve Gadd. You don't dictate what the parts or what he's supposed to play, or the instrument that he's supposed to play it on. So, but I think that Thundercat's thing is not applicable to just any kind of artist. So
it's not.
I can understand Raphael's, saying that no, that's not what I want. I don't want a 6-string bass that sounds like that. I want something else. But then you have to get somebody else. You don't get Thundercat to do it.
I guess.
Well, surprisingly,
I guess I'm asking it more in a relationship, because with like a Suzanne Vega, you're talking about more of a pop sound, something that's controlled, something that's I don't know if that's arranged or they edit it by feel. But when you're feeling it and you're being instructed to basically hold the line and play the root notes, is that something that ever happened? Is that something that happens a lot? Is it, it's you're a great bass player, but we need you to go bop, 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 bop.
Well, I don't mind going bop, 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 bop if that's what the song requires. I mean,
exactly.
You do what needs to be done. But you're right in the sense that when I did Suzanne's second album, the big one that had My Name is Luca and Tom's Diner and all that stuff on it. When I did that was we had the band at that point in time had a lot of free range to develop their own parts and their own sound and what they wanted to do, their own ideas, and that's, I think, one of the reasons that record has such a signature sound. And there's a lot of contributions from very good players on that really got their ideas across on the record. As time went on, when Suzanne started bringing in other producers, or certain producers that we work with after that, several producers on several different records, and they started really kind of putting their thumbprint on the record and restricting the ideas of the musicians, and kind of just what you said, telling them what to do, like play this and don't play that, and play this with this sound, or I've even had play this instrument as well. Don't play
Really? He would tell you what to play.
Yeah, don't play your Fender bass or this bass. Play this, play this bass. This is the sound I want. Which, when it got into that territory, I got more and more uncomfortable. I was able to kind of do what I was supposed to do, which is that's your ultimate job anyway. But as a, I felt that my
your art.
Yeah, my expression on my on what I do and the sound that I hear was more oppressed from the outside. So that does happen. But ultimately, that's your job. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm not Thundercat, so you don't call me and just expect me
signature
to
tones
unimpeded. So
Yes.
if I'm working for a producer that's brought in especially specifically to realize their vision of the recording or the project, then I have to work within those parameters.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was watching a special with Victor Wood, and he said he was playing a couple. He did this thing where he was with a live audience, and he started doing doom 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 doom. Now everyone starts clapping right away.
Yeah.
Then he goes, now all of a sudden I threw in doom doom doom. He's like, producer's gonna fire me. I'm out of a job now. He's like, see how you recognize that? He goes, ultimately, he goes, if I'm playing with Curtis Mayfield, I'm going now if he goes, if I go like, you're fired. He goes, ultimately your job is to lay down the groove.
That's right.
Now I can be the best sounding guy on the planet with all these notes. He's like, but no one wants to hire someone to do that. He goes, ultimately as a bass player, your expression is their expression. It's whatever they want you to do, unless you're self-produced, and that becomes a big issue.
Yeah, you have to be to become a successful studio player. That's really that's really the job. The job is to kind of be very selfless, and you offer your stuff. You have the skill set that people are inviting, a producer or the artist is inviting you in to work on a project, a record, a film score, whatever it might be. Your job is to be a really congenial team player and do what the project demands, and try to take your subjective vision, keep that outside of the studio, unless you're invited to interject and offer that.
Can I ask a question? Because you'd be the guy to ask this question. Over the years, and I'm going to say decades, and I'm saying this based on experience, especially recently, you don't carry amps. The way things have changed on these stages with these backlines is it's gone from multi-cabinet, multi-speaker Ampeg cabinets to everything to your DI'd with earbuds. Mm-hmm. And could you talk a little about that? Because I mean, just me as a player, like I go out and play clubs, and I got me a 2-pound 300-watt amp, and I got me an old Harkey cabinet refitted with an Eminence speaker, and mm-hmm. and I'm loving what I'm doing, but I'm seeing, and I talk to people out there, and everything has gone, I'll use the word hinky, in terms of having what you're used to and what you want, and I guess what you get when you get out there. Could you talk a little about that?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, amplification, speaker specifications, amplification has evolved light years from what it was in the 60s and 70s. Light mm-hmm. years. Mm-hmm. So in the early days, you needed bigger enclosures and bigger wattage heads, which almost inevitably meant tubes and all
heavy
kinds
weight.
of surgery, which
Ampeg SVT that weighed like 500 pounds.
Which inevitably meant weight, and especially on a bass, for me, to be able to like capture the sonic spectrum and be able to move enough air that you actually feel like you're doing something, you needed these bigger, this bigger equipment, this heavy equipment. And as time went on, the cabinets, the speakers, the speaker specs, the materials, the amplification, just became much more efficient and smaller, and they've actually been able to succeed in making certain transistor amps sound more tube-ish, or by putting a tube stage in it, or little something that you could run the signal through. There's all kinds of ways that things that have developed that has made it a lot easier to stand on stage and feel like you're getting like the full range of the instrument and you're moving enough air. And so the equipment got smaller, it got lighter, and I'm very, very happy about that. And the other thing that a lot of musicians don't understand is, and this comes from my very, very extensive amount of live playing on all kinds of stages, from stadium down to small clubs, is that you don't want to have a lot of equipment on stage. You don't want to have big, you don't want to have big, loud sounding equipment on pretty much almost any stage. I'll say
footprint you're talking about.
Yeah, because in the older days, you feel very macho with like 2 Ampeg SVTs behind you or whatever, but what it sounded like out front might be absolutely horrible because you're not giving the sound man anything to work with. You're overwhelming the whole mix. And
you're better low stage volume, and then they have a lot of room to play around with.
Well, that's the way to go. And as equipment got better, and as sound systems got better, which they certainly have, out front of house sound systems, the way to do it is by having smaller, really efficient equipment. And you want to have a great sound out front. You want to have the loudest, biggest sound out front. Mix yourself from the stage first. If you can't hear the guitar player, you're playing too loud. If you can't hear the drummer, you're playing too loud. You got to be able to hear the band in a combination of small equipment and a moderate amount of sound reinforcement through your monitors or side fills, whatever you're using. You have to do that first. You start turning up and overwhelming the stage and overwhelming the mix on the stage, you're handicapping the front of house sound person, and it's not going to sound as good. So I've played on stadium size stages with a 410 cabinet.
Wow.
And I'm totally fine with that, because
Mm-hmm.
you can just the other player can put a little bass in their monitor. I'm hearing enough in front of the cabinet. It sounds like a bass. It sounds full range to me, and that's all you need.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you for answering that, because
that actually was good.
we want to hit subjects that they're out there in people's heads, but we don't have really people who are out there in the field discussing, the evolution. It's like all the equipment changes and we don't have a say in what's going on, and it's being thrown at you. And a lot of times there's no gap to adapt.
Yeah.
You're like, here it is, go with it. And, whatever you did for 20 years, you got to change your game.
Well, fortunately, I mean, most of the backline companies and stage production companies, if you're doing festivals where you're not bringing your own stuff, but most of them are using, the better stuff, the more high end audio, bass bass stuff, whether it's Aguilar or Hartke or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All of these companies have gotten better. Even Gallion Kruger, all these companies have gotten a lot better, and a lot more efficient. So luckily, that's kind of become the default for high-end production companies and festivals that they're using good equipment all around. The thing that, you know, the disconnect is when you think that if I'm playing on a big stage or I'm playing for 1,000 or 2,000 people, I have to have bigger amplifiers, right? No, you don't. You don't. In fact, you're doing yourself a disservice if you have big amplifiers. I mean, if you could have a big amplifier, if you want to hear a lot of bass around you and you want to hear, you know, you have 2 8x10 cabinets, but that doesn't mean you have to play loud.
You have to play loud.
If you just want to surround yourself with some bass, that's nice, but don't play louder than you need to play.
I know a lot of guys who want to get back massages and play loud at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's also like, you know, the macho rock, you know, the macho rock guy with his foot on the monitor and, like, you know, big cabinets behind him doing his
true.
But like you just said, a lot of that evolved, and a lot of that big macho rock thing isn't necessarily in the game anymore.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many guys they have like 4 SVT cabinets and heads.
Oh yeah, and they're not on.
Behind the cabinets, they're playing in a you know, what you don't see is what they're actually playing through is like a
rumble,
410 Aguilar.
Yeah,
a rumble.
Yeah, they're playing through a rumble.
Or
I saw that,
or a fractal or something like that. You'd be surprised.
I saw that with Santana because, like, when I saw him at the Garden State Arts Center, 20,000 people, the only amp he had was a Boogie Mark 1 combo with a mic on it.
That's it. That's
it. You know, and you know, you know, the sound companies and the production companies are handling all that. And yet he's generating his tone like he's in his living room, which is, you know,
and it sounds like God. It sounds
like God. 100%.
In the
let's talk
that. It sounds like God. Yeah.
All right, we are a bass show, so let's talk about your favorite bass at this particular point and what strings are you using on that bass.
Oh, sure. Well, I've been with D'Addario. I used to be a full endorser of D'Addario for many years. I started with them at around 1981, and I am actually still with them. So I use D'Addario's, and I am a round wound pro steel player. That's my sound.
I'm a half round guy. D'Addario.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. I have friends.
I'm a half rounder.
I'm not.
Okay, so you've been a D'Addario guy for a long time.
Sorry, yeah. I've been with them since '82, basically, and I use a medium gauge string, like a 45 G string to a 100 low E on a 4-string. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I go to a 5-string, goes to 125, something like that.
Okay. Now, are you a gearhead? Do you grab basses and collect them, or do you just kind of play them if they feel good? Get great.
I have the basses that I have essentially are ones that I really like, and I use them, and that's the way I look at it. I don't have a lot of redundancy, and I don't like just having basses sitting around and not doing anything. So.
Okay, awesome. All right, so this is gonna be one.
I have about 10 instruments, I think now, something like that.
Okay, right now. Okay, awesome. And then mostly Fenders for the most part.
No, they kind of go all over the place. You know, I have actually my number one bass that I play almost exclusively is a Lakeland Joe Osborne bass with 2 Nordstrom pickups in it. I'm
sorry. Say it one more time.
It's a Lakeland Joe Osborne bass with 2 Lindy Fralin pickups in it.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. And now, why did you? Now, why is that your like? What's the reason why you love that bass so much?
Because it has an early '60s jazz bass profile neck that feels like butter. It's a solid bass with full range sound. Those pickups are beautiful, and it sounds like a really good jazz bass. And it's about 20 years old, so it is just a solid.
Broken in.
It's broken in. it's the, you know, the neck is like
It's
has
that
a
Aquarius tone. It's that let the
Yes.
sunshine in.
No, he was using a Fender at that. It's got a beautiful feel, and it sounds wonderful, and it's a solid instrument that doesn't need a lot of maintenance. You pick it up, it hardly ever needs any kind of adjustment, and it almost stays completely in tune from one day to the next. It's one of those kind of basses.
Wow.
If I could interject, any experience or comments on foam mute? Do you ever use one?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Depending on, you know.
And do you make your own?
Yeah, mostly in a recording environment where you want to get, you know, you want to get that real retro sound where there's just like, you know, basically just fundamental and no sustain, you know, with flat wound strings, of course. And yeah, so I have used you make your own foam, stick it under the, you know, in the strings by the bridge, and Bob's your uncle, as they say.
And the second part to that is, how do you know your foam's dialed in?
You have to, well, you have to get a certain amount of response from each string to make it sound kind of consistent. So you just have to keep you know, fussing around with the foam until it feels like, okay, now the bass is responding the way it has to, like the A string's not too muted, the G string's not too unmuted, you know, it's that kind of thing.
This is where I dig in deep, and Anthony goes, who uses the foam mute at all?
Yeah, no, people do. Oh, more people than you would think.
More people than I realize.
And that's what I bring out.
Than you realize, especially now, like, you know, the retro funk and soul sound is like, you know, very chic again. So a lot of cats are using like you know, older kind of weird basses with flat wound strings and foam mutes, and, you know, trying to go for what they think is like the appropriate sound for the
well, I mean, back then that was original equipment.
That's right.
They used to have original equipment as foam mutes.
No, I know it came on old jazz basses.
Yes, it did.
Yep.
I know. Yep. I know it did. It was retractable.
Yep. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
It was retractable. You can bring it up.
We're coming to an end to our lovely interview. I want you to two things before you go, because normally Greg and I have a thing of, we have one last question out of 10,000 questions, and we go on.
And then it turns into 10 questions. So it may not be the last question.
Okay.
Yep. So two things I want you to discuss. I want you to discuss the books that you have written, the books that you have penned, and also I want you to talk in terms of, what would you say to a young aspiring working bass player who he's aspiring to become a working bass player? Like, what would you say to someone like that person who wants to get in the market? But let's discuss your books first, and then discuss the motivation behind your books. Okay,
so I was approached by Music Institute in LA to do two curriculum books. One is on oh my gosh, let me think here. One was on reggae. One was on various was not completely reggae. It was at various playing styles, including reggae. Okay. And as far as I know, they're still using that book.
Are you a big reggae guy as far as your bass playing?
I really love it, but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a big reggae guy. But,
okay.
Got it. So one was on various playing styles, including reggae. They wanted to make sure that was in there. And then the other one was on reading.
Okay.
And so I wrote those two books, and then the other book was a labor of love book that it's called A View from the Side, which actually it's still in print and still can be bought, and people have bought it. And it's through you can get it on Amazon, but the original publisher is Wisdom Music, WIZDOM Music, and that's a book of personal stories, road stories amazing road stories, and it's in the middle is a whole bunch of really cool interviews with great bass players from, you know, Marcus Miller, Will Lee, Tony Levin, Jeff Berlin, Duck Dunn, even Colin Moulding from XTC. I got him.
You see?
Great
1,
player.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Great
I love
player,
that bass line.
A lot of expression.
Oh, it's great player, very underrated player, and very great player.
I mean, you were around New York City all the time, and my big breakout and influence was I got dragged to McKell's, the original McKell's.
Yeah.
And few of the guys I met, one guy who isn't passed on, and I don't know if you ever met him, was Wayne Peswater.
Wayne was a friend of mine, of course.
I got that vibe, and he changed.
I'm still friendly with his wife.
Still, that guy, I saw him play with the Tom Rotella band, and with Clint Gannon on drums.
It was another very good friend of mine,
and it changed everything. Like you said, when you saw something and you said you knew you wanted to do this, it was that for me in the late '80s, and I got dragged down on an off night, and there's Tom Rotella, and there's Clint Gannon, and there's this guy on bass, and the way he hit it. He had supposedly just come off tour from Buddy Rich, who had unfortunately had a heart attack and passed. And there's Wayne. And you talk about how a personal identity can take over a stage and be part of a group.
Yeah.
But he was the guy. I mean, I saw that whole solo he did that's on YouTube with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Saw that live, and he's slapping and he's popping and he's picking.
He was one of the cats, man. He's one of the
he was.
He's, you know, and in the 70s or in the 80s, he was one of the top 5 session bass players.
Yes, he was. And he was in the Honey Drippers.
Tragically, I mean, this guy was an athlete. He was an athlete.
He was huge.
He was built like a brick house. An athlete, never didn't smoke, didn't drink, nothing, and tragically dies of cancer.
He got sick.
Oh,
wow.
Oh, Wayne Peswater was unfortunately one of the most underrated, unknown. He still got the credits. He's still on records. But I met him before. It had to be 88, 89. And if I drift and sound old, you know, it's because I was 18, 19 years old sneaking into these places.
Sure.
But the two other cats that I caught there, the first one was Stanley Banks.
Oh, yeah.
Stanley Banks from the George Benson Band. Playing a tambourine, you know, and on his foot. And you're going, how can the guy play tambourine on his foot and still do this? And the other guy was Avery Sharp. And I had the opportunity of seeing him with McCoy Tyner, who actually played this little club.
I think I was there. I saw.
Oh, come on! Oh my God! And Avery Sharp actually played an electric bass.
Well, wait a second. Maybe not then, because I only saw
on 3 or 4 songs. He actually played an electric bass and put it down like it was kryptonite. But
wow. But no, I never saw an electric bass with McCoy. So
it was. I mean, I don't know if somebody just handed it to him or he just brought it, but he had the biggest hands I ever saw play an electric bass. And this is like what molded me was this free spirit attitude of playing, you know, and you'd go there and you'd see who it is with different players. And, you know, I saw Dave Weckl before he got signed to Chick Corea, filling in for Steve Gadd, and they'd always have these different bass players. But do you have any McKell stories?
No, but I mean that was where, you know, it was the holy shrine for stuff. It was
the holy shrine
for stuff, you know.
And that's who you'd go see. I mean, they didn't use that name.
People came from all over the world to go see Gordon Edwards and Steve Gadd and Cornell Dupree and
Richard T.
You know, it was the holy. It was like, you know, it was like going. You know,
it really set my bar.
It was like going to Mecca. You know, you have to do
Mecca.
Yeah,
and there was no one there. I mean, and you witnessed the heavies. Letting loose, and it was also, you know,
creating. They created essentially they created an entirely new kind of way of playing, because it was all of their group, the group stuff was 98% about just playing the groove.
The groove.
It wasn't about melodies.
Melody.
It wasn't
about the heavy
like,
soloing.
It was about like just playing the deepest grooves that you can come up with, and just making people go into a frenzy from the hipness of the whole thing.
I'm still in a frenzy.
Yeah,
Nice.
So that's what
Okay, now,
the frenzy.
Yes.
That's
on that note,
yeah,
I need to come to an end. Okay. So now this is going to be your this is where you answer the question. What do you tell an aspiring young bassist who wants to become a working bassist? And this is the pros and the cons, obviously.
Yeah, well, this is a very, very tough question. What I would, only because it has to be handled delicately, because this is the toughest time in my life for anybody that I know who's young, try to become a professional musician. What I would say to them is not think about pursuing this. Not think about the monetary rewards of pursuing it. That may or may not come, but to tip the hand in your favor that it may come, is you have to work harder than you've ever worked before on your instrument. You have to be committed to doing it. When you think you've put in the time and worked hard, you have to work harder than that. That's the only way to rise above the fray. That's the only way to get recognition these days. The competition is fierce. There are a tremendous amount of really good players. The technique and chops have gotten, otherworldly, but that's not really that's not what it's all about. It's about you working and learning as much about your instrument, as much about every possible style that you can learn, and committing yourself to doing it, living and breathing it and eating it. And that's the only way you can tip the hand in your favor.
Wow.
Thank you.
Words of wisdom from Mike.
It's a great talk. I can't wait till I actually make it to the bass.
Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you guys, and stay well.
Round of applause for our guest.
And I hope to see you guys soon.
This is great.
Yes, man. You will. You will.
Thank
you very much.
You will see us both at the lunch again.